Do you notice how after you spend enough time in lockdown, everything doesn't just look the same, but also sounds the same? And yeah, that's absolutely a smell I'm tired of. Look, I don't know about you, but I could do with a getaway. Thankfully, for just 20 English pounds, you can get an all expenses paid trip to Crime City, featuring
Yeah, I was born in Slough, so that doesn't impress me. What does impress me is just how good Micro Macro Crime City is. Buckle in, because I am about to tell you about the best whodunit board game I've laid these hands on in a long time. And if I'm completely honest, I don't think you'll believe me. Micro Macro takes the familiar concept of detectiving your way through fictional crime mysteries from the comfort of your board gaming table and blends it with, oh god, I'm actually saying this, Where's Wally? Or Waldo if you're American. Or Willy if you're South African. Holger if you're Danish. Jura if you're Croatian.
Yeah, Jura.
But still Wally if you're Polish. You know what I hate? Where's Wally? I've got better things to do with my time than search the crowd for a dorky looking man. They're not as rare as you think, and besides I've already got one of those. So saying that I didn't have high hopes for this is an understatement. And yet imagine my surprise when I realised I wasn't just enjoying Micro Macro, but every time we finished a case, all I wanted to do was play just one more case. And now my dorky looking man will show you how to play.
Let's get criminal. When you open Micro Macro, you'll find a magnifying glass, a bunch of envelopes and cards that you'll separate into cases, and what I can only describe as an uncomfortably large map of the city. Each envelope features a sequence of cards that tells you about a crime, gives you a lead, and then asks you to solve it. How? Let me show you. Oh wait, that's right. I can't. In your average peas and potatoes board game review, a middle-aged man would now tell you that he's not going to spoil the story, as if board games with stories good enough not to spoil exist. But here's a problem. With Micro Macro, it's not just that I can't tell you the what, because I'd ruin the experience. I also can't tell you the how, which means that I can't tell you anything. So this is going to be a fun review. Wait a minute. I totally forgot about the box, 'cause there's a demo scenario on the box. And that same scenario is also printed on this map, so I can show you how this works, and we can pretend like we're playing this game. Who's that man with a fancy moustache? I don't actually know, but I like to call him Gustav, and he's the burger vendor. He cooks burgers, he has a burger stand, and life is great. Nothing bad is going to happen to Gustav. Here he is later in the day, going home from work, and that's him further down the road. Wait, haven't we seen that masked bunny somewhere before? Yeah, I'm sure it's just a coincidence. No, actually, it's not a coincidence. Gustav, watch out. He's got a bat, and I don't think he's headed for rounders practice. Gustav? Gustav! Are you okay, Gustav? Say cauliflower pizza if you're okay.
I don't think Gustav is okay. Be honest with me, I bet your impression was, that was cute but maybe a little bit boring. And I would agree, but thankfully the rest of this game has more charm, more character, more zing, more aha moments than both seasons of Alan Partridge. Here's the twist. Calling this Where's Wally is a bit of a misnomer. Unlike the adventures of the stripy mononome, the landscape of Crime City isn't a singular snapshot in time. Rather, the same characters appear in multiple instances, each a depiction of the rencontre with the insalubrious. And because we can trace someone's journey, we not only have the perfect vehicle for telling a story, but more importantly, for telling a corny detective story. The burger vendor murder, that's just the tip of this cold killer iceberg. The 1% that peeks above the surface to show you the basic gist, the idea of how you'll be solving these cases. Each actual case will teach you new ways to interact with this framework, and crucially, instead of introducing more rules, it will introduce more ideas about how to unravel this story. And that is why we can't tell you more about how Micro Macro plays, because finding out is half the joy. The fun of Micro Macro isn't mechanical, it's the discovery which is the beating heart of every good detective story. Take the structure of Columbo. At the start of every episode, you're not only shown who committed the murder, but how, why, where, and with what. Because that's not the part that keeps you glued to your seat. It's the process. And this box, it's that process distilled.
I don't want to give people the impression that what they'll discover inside is amazing yarns.
No, the stories in Micro Macro are predictable and so over-reliant on tropes that it's almost comical. If you see your suspect spritzing on perfume, 90% chance they're not doing it for their partner. And that right there is motive and a lead towards the suspect, which is perhaps just enough information for you to go and scour the map for new clues, leading on to new revelations.
Because Micro Macro lays into corny detective tropes harder than a hungry bulldozer, we always know what's up. We just have to find out where it leads. And then, when we get there...
Shock!
I cannot believe it!
Who could have predicted that?
That thing?
That was the thing!
Did you know about the thing?
What thing?
I don't know, I forgot.
What to me is most revealing is that this game gets even better when the threadbare undergarments of rules falls off and all you're left with is naked sleuthing. Included in the game is the expert mode, which says rather than using a small deck of cards, each of which leads you towards the next question you should be asking yourself about the mystery, don't use any cards at all. Just flip the first one that tells you where to start the investigation and solve the case, just by looking. In no other game would this work because detective or puzzle games are so notorious about using detective game logic, where you combine a screwdriver with a pencil sharpener to get a needle or something. Instead of using detective logic, Micro Macro uses logic. There's no way that the expert mode would work if each case didn't have a cohesive narrative and instead was stuffed with chewy game. It's a salad prepared by a Michelin chef, still full of flavour and texture and crunch, as opposed to that questionable pheasant pie that you bought in your local chippy.
And finally, the star of the show. This ridiculous, gigantic map. It's not so much the size of it, obvs, but that it's big and full to the brim with character. Everywhere you look, there's people. And some of them aren't criminals or victims. They're just normal, regular folk who probably couldn't afford to live in Pleasant City or not at all dangerous city. Perhaps my favorite thing about playing this game is that as I'm trying to solve a grisly or whatever, my eye would occasionally catch someone I've seen before. And sometimes that someone would be from a future case, but sometimes they would be someone who's not got anything to do with anything. They're just living their life, and you spot a glimpse of it. And just like that, this city comes to life. But also, it's so about the size. This is way too big to just place in front of yourself and go, aha, and now I am going to do the looking. Instead, you have to stand, loom, scan, trace, and do all kinds of other physical actions that, sure, maybe aren't as comfortable as just plonking down on the sofa with a case of Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, but Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective is just reading, and this is actual detectiving. Let me say this now so there is no doubt. This is my favorite solve a mystery game ever made.
So then, what's the problem?
This is so sad. So you know those tropes we've been talking about? Well, turns out over-relying on tropes has its own set of issues. First of all, this box says this is fine for children ages 8 and higher. I would say that the only way that's true is if you're comfortable explaining a lot of topics to your children that I certainly wouldn't, all in a very short space of time. But who knows? I'm not a parent. The real problem is that sometimes things got so tropey that they got regressive. In one instance, the game made light of eating disorders, and eating disorders are not a punchline. And in another instance, it used terminology that I just wasn't comfortable with.
Did that ruin it for you?
I don't know. It made me feel not great. And it's a real shame because the rest of this was so much fun. Even when the cases became easy, we could just lose all the hints and then lose ourselves in this world.
So there you go. I'm not going to say that we recommend Micro Macro because I don't need to. It's so obviously great that it speaks for itself.
Also, we don't want to recommend Micro Macro because the parts that are not great make us feel a little bit uncomfortable. But strangely, I also want it to sell well enough that they make more of it, but without the problematic bits. This video is sponsored by Skillshare, the online learning community that offers thousands of classes on various subjects, from interior design to photography to even board game design. If you ever felt like you needed to go on holiday, but you can't actually go on holiday, why not learn something new instead? Just browsing through Skillshare's library is bound to spark inspiration. I've long felt like my garden could do with a bit of sprucing up, so I've taken some cues from Geraldine Lavin's Gardening 101, a guide for growing and caring for plants. And in mere weeks, my garden went from looking like this to looking like this. Okay, that's obviously stock footage, but it's March in England. What do you expect? There's many more classes to discover, and it is less than $10 a month if you get the annual subscription. And if you just want to try Skillshare, the first 1,000 of you to click the link in the description will find a trial of Skillshare Premium membership.
Aha!